Hello, healthy people, and welcome back to the Organelle podcast. In today's episode, we're exploring an introduction to health excellence through sleep. We'll navigate through the key effects sleep has on your health, what most people get wrong when it comes to sleep, and even how you can go about maximizing your health and energy. As always, I'm Xavior Greenhalgh, and joining me is none other than the Organelle digital health platform's leading practitioner, Lionel Godwin. So, without further ado, let's all take the next step on our health journey. Good to be here, Lionel. How are we today?
Xavier, I'm extremely well, thank you. Well rested and had a great night's sleep last night, which I believe we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, that's beautifully on the point because today we're coming up with our second last episode in the Organelle Basics series, and that is covering one of the fundamental pillars of health, which is sleep. The way we rest, the way we recover and relax. So, Lionel, to kick it right off with a bang, could you give us a very basic layman's definition of what is sleep?
Well, it's simple. Sleep is a naturally occurring or recurring state of rest for the mind and body. It's essential for our health and well-being because it's where the body repairs and regenerates.
I think that's going to click with all of our viewers. So we say that, and everyone just kind of knows that sleep is this thing that lets you rest and that regenerates you, and somehow that does energy or something. But what is the actual, like, what's happening under the hood whilst we sleep? What's our body doing?
That's a really, really, really good question, and it points to why the answer will point to why sleep is so essential for us, and good regular sleep is so essential. So let's look at it. During sleep, the body produces hormones. It helps regulate the appetite and our metabolism. It reduces stress levels. It allows us and our immune system to regenerate and recuperate. It allows for the bodies to really just reach that calm state where all of these things while we're asleep are going on to really help the body regenerate and prepare itself for the next day. And it's, good quality sleep is absolutely essential to good overall health and well-being.
Right, you said that sleep is when we produce hormones.
Yep.
What's happening with that? What do you mean?
So when we're sleeping, the body's using the body's chemistry to create the hormones that the body needs to just do all of the things that the body does on so many different levels. It supports the immune system. It allows our brain to, to store memories and consolidate those memories. It allows us to process information whilst we're asleep. It allows our organs to function and use the body's chemistry that is enhanced during sleep to prepare itself for the rigors of the next. If we're not getting really good sleep, our immune system is compromised. We get an increased risk of diabetes. We get increased cancer risks. We get much more information in the body. We lose our cognitive functioning if we're not getting really, really good sleep. And our memory and moods are really impacted by a lack of sleep, as is our productivity. So, it's one thing to say what's going on within the body. It's another thing to say what's not going on within the body if we're not getting good sleep.
Yeah, I want to hit you with my kind of understanding of it. My layman's brain processes it the bro sciencey way is our body always has a certain amount of energy based on the nutrition it gets that it can dedicate to physiological processes. And whilst we're awake, it's too busy dedicating that to things like thinking and movement to really assign any to the recovery aspects that we need to ensure that we aren't, just falling apart from the constant stress that we exhibit. And then when we go to sleep, because we don't have to put energy into those things like complex thinking or heavy movements, we can dedicate all of that surplus that we now have to the recovery processes that keep us functioning happy and healthy. Is that roughly right?
That is 100% right. So that it's that restorative aspect to it, and that regeneration aspect whilst we're sleeping for all of the reasons that you just alluded to. We're in this rested, calm state, and this recurring resting, calm state. It happens every night, or if you're a shift work, every afternoon or every morning. And yeah, because the body's got nothing else to really focus on, what it does, there's a whole range of things going on within the body,
Mm.
but it's because it doesn't have so many pressures on it. That's when it's producing the right hormones. It's getting the right chemical reactions taking place. It's restoring us in areas that need restoring the most, and working through those systematically to so that we can wake up the next day and be as functional as we can possibly be.
If you had to rate the quality of sleep that the average person gets out of 10, what number would you give them and why?
Oh, I couldn't do it individually because it's different. It varies for everybody. But if I was to talk about what an ideal night of sleep would look like, we're talking
Okay.
about 7 to 9 hours of good rested sleep. And, part of that is creating conditions to get good restful sleep as well. And, there's a whole range of aspects that go into that. But, there are many people who have conditioned their bodies to only have 4 or 5 hours of sleep. And it's generally thought that the older we get, the less sleep we require. I don't necessarily agree with that, because you can be older and still have a really active, normal
Mm.
lifestyle that you had during your 30s, 40s, 50s. So, if we're getting between 7 and 9 hours of good sleep a night in a general sense, I think that would be the ideal for most people. Children, obviously, and babies need a lot longer, because they have a lot more chemical and hormonal activity going on as well, and they require so much more restful sleep than what we do as we age.
Well said. I think the quantitative argument for sleep is pretty well established out there that everyone should be getting 7 to 9 hours unless you're some kind of freak. But what's more interesting to me and what's a lot more diverse in terms of the answers out there on the web is what we can do to improve sleep quality. And I'd be
Mm.
really interested to hear your take on that, Lionel. If you could have only one person integrate some kind of habit or change in their sleep environment to improve the quality of their sleep, what's the one thing you'd make them do?
Prepare for sleep.
Mm.
So, and that doesn't cover one aspect. So, to prepare for sleep, one is to understand that when you're hopping into bed, you're hopping into bed to go to sleep. So, make that, I try and clear my mind before I go to bed so that I'm not going to lie in bed and rest. I understand that if I'm going to bed, I'm going to bed to sleep. So, I know if I put my head on the pillow, within 5 minutes, I want to be asleep. So, I need to prepare myself for sleep. I need to have a really good pillow to help me sleep. I need to have a really good mattress that suits my needs when it comes to sleep. The most important thing for me is to not have any stimuli before I go to sleep, and stimuli in the form of alcohol, um, foods, or blue screens, or books or music or something that is high energy. These are the things I try and avoid before going to sleep. I understand that I get a window for sleep every day. I try and make the most of that by, as I say, having a good pillow, preparing for sleep, understanding why I'm going to sleep, trying not to think while I'm asleep, and limiting my stimuli before I go to bed.
Yeah, I'm really interested to hear your take on just go more in depth on the preparing for sleep habit, because you have some very strange, like hyper dialed in sleep habits that we'll get into later. But for now, how? So just walk me through it. What are you doing in like the hour before you get into bed? It's really letting your mind cool down and go into that rest mode.
What I'm doing is trying to recognize where I'm at within my energy levels and my waves of preparing for sleep. So I understand that when we get tired, that sleep comes in waves, and it's recognizing where we're at in that sleep wave and preparing myself to go to bed for that. So the first thing I've done, and I've trained this over many, many, many years, to recognize when I'm at the top of a wave, that then I know I've got a 10 to 15 minute window to get into bed and to fall asleep. And I've become really good at recognizing when I'm at the top of that well, I'm approaching the top of that wave. So I don't go over it, because once I go over it, I have to wait for the decline and then the rise in the wave again. So I've become really adept at recognizing whether I'm sitting down watching television or speaking with my partner or doing something, of recognizing when it's time. My body's sending me signals to say, Lionel, it's time to go to bed. And that's the number one thing I like to do, is recognize when I'm ready for sleep. And then if I miss that window, and it's a finite window of 10 to 15 minutes, I know not to even try. I wait till I recognize that trend again. And then if I'm ready for bed, I'll go to bed once I'm at the top of that wave.
Yeah, the parallel my mind draws there is to ghrelin, which, if you don't know, is a hormone that our body uses to stimulate hunger responses, right? And what you typically find is that even if you do nothing about being incredibly hungry, because this ghrelin hormone operates in waves, as long as you
Waves
ignore it, the hunger will just disappear after a
dissipate.
while.
That's
Is
very
it a
true.
similar process for this, Lionel? Are we some kind of
Almost
sleep
identical.
hormone? Yeah.
Almost identical. So,
Hmm.
you know, melatonin and is one of the things that really helps promote good sleep. And I like to, if I'm advising people on what to do around good sleep, tryptophan is one of the foods. It's an amino acid that helps release more melatonin. So I try and encourage people to have foods that are rich in tryptophan, which helps release that melatonin, which then helps us get a really good and restful sleep, hopefully.
My brain's
So,
made a little synaptic leap there. You've said melatonin's the important hormone here. I don't know much, but I know that melatonin's a thing in the skin and
yeah.
has a lot to do with sunlight. How much does sunlight affect our sleep?
Again, it varies for individuals. It's very, very different across cultures in particular. The amount of influence that sun has. For instance, if you get really badly sunburnt and you try to go to
Mm,
sleep, it's generally a very difficult thing to do, because
mm,
your body's hot, you're agitated, all of your nerves, which are, particular nerves at the surface of the skin, are tingling from, having been, really severely burnt. But, generally a good vitamin D from the sun, again, helps balance out hormones within the body. So that helps a lot with getting good regular sleep.
and how does the circadian rhythm factor into all this? Do you want to explain what that is for our listeners?
Yeah, so the circadian rhythm is basically the body's normal rhythms, the natural rhythms of the body. And again, understanding that the body is wired to a certain way of performing and acting, and for most people, that is that we go to bed at 8, 9, 10, 11 o'clock at night. We get our 7, 8, 9 hours of sleep. We wake up at virtually the same time every day, and we go through our normal rhythms of the day. Our circadian rhythm is the rhythms of the body's natural rhythms and the body's natural inclination to follow a tried and true pathway. So by understanding our energy needs and the circadian rhythm as it works, we can link that into trying to set really good routines around our sleep. If we become really accustomed to going to bed at a certain time each night, our circadian rhythm will eventually, because it's a very adaptive intelligence, almost, for want of a better way of putting it, it allows us to understand these rhythms and vibrations within our body to go, right, it's time for sleep, and we move with those cycles and rhythms very, very effectively, if we've learned to manage them and understand them.
What would your advice be? Let's say someone has a really messed up sleep pattern, right? I'm a dev team lead, so I have a lot of developers who are almost nocturnal on my team. What would your advice be for someone who wants to consciously try and change their circadian rhythm because it's become set at some really unfortunate times? Like maybe they're going to bed at 3 a.m. and they're waking up at 12. What could they do to try and forcibly change that to something more healthy?
Just to start to develop some good habits around sleep. So understand what sleep looks like for them, understand what they need in terms of the amount of sleep that they need, the conditions by which they need to sleep, and then what they have to do to contribute to that structure. So, it's a really difficult thing. Sleep is one of the most, difficult areas that a lot of people have in terms of managing their overall health and well-being. It's something that is so difficult for so many people. So many people hop into bed, and the first thing their mind does is wander to all of the issues and all of the problems and all of the stresses that they've been feeling throughout the day. And then all of a sudden they get into bed and their mind starts going in all of these different directions. And that's one of the first things to try and master is control of the mind, and allowing the mind to just try and empty out. Now, for some people, that might be deep breathing. For some people, that might be meditation. For some people, that might be sex, that allows them just to, get all of these feel good endorphins, and then just calms them, and they can go to sleep. Um, Whatever it might be for you, it's understanding what it looks like for you, and then what you can do to contribute to the regime of sleep. And for me, that's just understanding what your needs are, creating that environment in which to get your best habits of sleep, and retraining, and being persistent, really trying to follow these little goals or little triggers that you might have that enable you to think about sleep. You alluded earlier to me. I have some very weird sleep
Mm.
habits, and one of them is to be very consistent around what time I go to bed and what time I wake up. The other is also to recognize in my own day, if I need a 20-minute power nap, I've trained myself to have a 20-minute power nap. I can put my head on a pillow and go to sleep for 20 minutes, and without setting alarms or anything, it's just allowing my body's natural rhythms to become connected and understood by the body. And I can put my head on a pillow. 20 minutes later, I'll wake up. I also know that if I've hopped and decided I need a 20-minute power nap, if I've hopped into my sleeping position, or wherever it might be, in a chair or in my bed or whatever, if I haven't fallen asleep within 2 or 3 minutes, I know that I'm not going to go to sleep. So I immediately get up. I don't try and force this. I never try and force sleep. It's the same if I've gone to bed and I've missed that wave. I won't lay in bed and think about it. I'll just get up. And even if I'm only up for 10 or 15 minutes, I'll get out of bed. Because the one thing I don't want to associate my bed with is a failure to go to sleep. So I try and take away.
Ah.
Okay, most people see the bed as it's when I get into bed. So I try and take that out. I don't want the bed to be the place that I'm not going to sleep. I want it to be the place where when I get in there, I'm going to sleep. So I remove myself from the bed so that the bed itself or getting into bed is not the issue. Now that sounds a bit esoteric and out there, but it's just
No,
what
I've got
really,
it.
yeah,
That I'd never thought of it like that. Our brain is trained to make certain, like, to tie certain
yeah.
places to certain processes, and if we tie the process of just sitting in our bed to the bed, then obviously it's going to make it a lot harder than if we were just
Well,
only ever falling asleep in there.
yeah, Xavier, it creates anxiety for people, because they know, I'm getting into bed and I know I'm going to toss and turn, and I know I'm going to think about this, and I know I'm going to think about that. So start to try and erase those thoughts from your mind, over weeks, if it takes weeks. But also, as I said, don't see the bed as the enemy. When you get in there, if you haven't been able to fall asleep quickly, or you find that your mind is racing, get out and do whatever it is that can hopefully clear your mind of whatever it is that's stopping you from falling asleep.
Yeah, we talked previously about trying to eliminate these really stimulating things like work or reading or watching something before you go to bed. So when you say for people to just get up out of bed and do something, what do you recommend they do in order to avoid, just re-stimulating the brain?
If you are where I am at the moment, which is in Victoria, and we're heading into winter, I've always got a fireplace burning in my house. I'll go and sit in front of the fire
Mm.
and just watch the flames. I find them just so calming, and just relaxing. Otherwise, I'll just go and sit. I'll just go into the lounge or into the man cave, and I'll just sit. I won't have the TV on. I might put some very slow music, not stimulating music. Might be, you know, some chilled hits or something that just is calm and relaxing, where I can think about the lyrics of the song. I try and, when I'm in that state, I try and really listen to the lyrics of whatever it is I'm listening to try and find some meaning in the song. or try and understand why the song was written. Just little things like that. I try and avoid, the blue light, for instance. I don't try and put the TV on. I try not to read. For me, reading stimulates my mind too much. I'm starting to think about, okay, if I put the book down, what am I missing out on in the next paragraphs and stuff like that? So I certainly never study whenever before I'm going to bed, because that really takes my mind to a whole different range of places. Yeah, I just do something that's very quiet and just very calm and relaxed.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent place to cap it off. We've given people all the strategies they could need and all the basic information that we believe in around sleep. So thank you for your time today, Lionel.
It's my pleasure, and good night. Have a great night's sleep.
Beautiful. I have to give some of that stuff a try. Till next time.
Yeah, good on you. Take care.